and around the world. This is the news at 2200 hours in the headlines tonight. Improving content packaging and technical expertise, a three-member team from Senegal arrives in the country for an assessment tour of GRTS facilities. Ministry of Finance and private stakeholders or sector stakeholders meet to discuss the implementation of the SDGs and NDP among others. Modernizing national statistical systems to provide data and statistics to support sustainable peace and development in Africa is the global theme for this year's African Statistics Day. Elsewhere around the world, Tanzania's President John Magufuli pledges to focus on the economy, bringing investors this following his re-election as the country's new president. And a World Bank delegation visits Cairo to help review Egypt's economic policy. These and much more on the news tonight. With me, Fatih Kamulushi. Many thanks for joining us. Hello there, it's great to have you with us. Now we begin with a development for the national broadcaster as a team of experts from Senegalese national broadcaster RTS is in the Gambia on a 4-day assessment tour of the Gambia radio and television services. On day one of the team's visit, the three-member team inspected facilities at the GRTS television studios, where they held discussions with the Director General of GRTS and his senior management team. The visit, as Esitu Keita reports, is aimed at transforming the national broadcaster and improving its content packaging in a new digital age.
This is day one of a 4-day assessment tour, and the Senegalese experts from RTS began work in earnest. A meeting with the Director General of GRTS and members of the senior management team kicked off the day's event. The team later toured facilities including units under the engineering department. A first stop at the electrical room, where the team inspected critical structures and equipment. With increasing efforts aimed at expanding cooperation between GRTS and RTS, the timely arrival of the team is expected to generate the desired effect.
teew fii tey ci GRTS mu ngi jóge ci ndigalu président de la République du Sénégal monsieur Macky Sall mu teg ko ci loxo suñu directeur général Racine Talla.
Our presence here at GRTS is as a result of a directive from the President of the Republic of Senegal through the Director General of RTS, Racine Talla. This came as a result of a visit by a GRTS delegation to RTS last year. We met and discussed on important issues, since RTS is one of the leading names in radio and television broadcasts in Africa. Our Gambian counterparts from GRTS, having the good initiative, asked for help to improve the state of the equipment and restructure its branding to meet modern standards. The management of the Gambia Radio and Television Services is moving to reposition the national television and expanding its coverage and improving content packaging, as well as better transmission using new innovative ideas backed by new partnerships.
So now that analog broadcasting is being phased out, we think it's important that we work with partners both inside and outside the country to see how best we can improve our programming and also our technical operations. So it was based on that we requested from the government of Senegal through the Office of the President. The Secretary General was very instrumental in spearheading that move to make sure that we write to the government of Senegal for them to support GRTS in this transformation process. So we want to thank the government for that support that they have been given to GRTS, and also for RTS and the government of Senegal, for responding to our request, to come and support in this venture.
An inspection visit to other facilities provided the team the opportunity to assess the state of the various studios and the available technical backup necessary for the operations of these facilities.
GRTS at the moment is in their need of support, and the reason why we could not compete globally is not because of the capacity deficiency in terms of staff, but the capacity deficiency in terms of equipment. If we have the necessary equipment in place, GRTS will not only be able to compete regionally, but will be able to restore its lost glory.
Officials of the Gambia Radio and Television Services are hopeful of achieving the desired results from this high-profile visit, which is set to help in the transformation of the television as it transitions into a new digital age. For GRTS News, this is Aissatou Keita.
Now, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, in collaboration with development partners, have convened a day-long voluntary national review consultation forum with the private sector to interact, share findings on the Sustainable Development Goals, National Development Plan, as well as expand discussion on the socio-economic impact of COVID-19 in the Gambia. Winifred Nico has more in this report.
In July this year, the Gambia delivered a virtual report to development partners on the voluntary national review on the progress and challenges encountered in the implementation of sustainable development goals. Challenges highlighting poverty in rural Gambia, as well as difficulties in accessing data, which led to delays in reporting on all the SDGs in the country.
One of the findings is we registered progress in areas like access to education, access to health. We've also seen improvements in access to energy, that is electricity. We have seen at least improvement in the road infrastructure, but there are also challenges in the area of enhancing the quality of education as well as the quality of health services that is being delivered, but also to continue on enhancing access to markets through feeder roads construction. But also, most importantly, one of the findings is we need to continue to enhance understanding and knowledge around the Sustainable Development Goals.
The socio-economic impact of COVID-19 devastatingly affected every aspect of public life. The pandemic particularly derailed the private sector, with the tourism industry taking the biggest hit.
At the moment, we are looking at bookings less than 10% of what we had last year. This is very bad for the tourism. A lot of the hotels are not even open. Some are trying to operate, but operate with very limited amount of guests. And right now, the only guests we are seeing, they are guests who somehow have a connection to the Gambia. If they already have friends or family here, or if it's people who come here for business. The traditional tourist, we are not seeing them, because the tour operators that normally bring the majority of the guests we see in the Gambia, Gambia Experience, TUI, Corindon, before it was Thomas Cook, but they went bankrupt, and now a department is Nordic Leisure Travel Group. A lot of them, they're not even operating. Nordic Leisure Travel Group cancelled flights for all season. Corindon has cancelled everything. TUI, Gambia Experience, they're not operating yet. They might start in December, but that depends on development of Corona in Europe.
The execution of National Development Plan surpasses its mid-term implementation stage, covering strategic priorities and critical enablers, such as the empowerment of women in realizing their full potential and restoration of good governance, respect for human rights, rule of law, and empowerment of citizens through decentralization and local governance.
The midway was in December 2019, and the National Development Plan made provision for a midterm evaluation. We wanted to embark on the evaluation earlier in the year, but due to the COVID-19 restrictions, we were not able to do so. Now that the restrictions are a little bit relaxed, we are embarking on that midterm evaluation so that we will be able to know the status of the implementation of the National Development Plan. And that's why we are engaging all stakeholders from the regional levels to the central level here, including the private sector, civil society, people living with disability, etc.
The Director of Programs and Operations at the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Sarata Konate, described the private sector as the engine of growth, which also thrives on constant public-private dialogue to pave a way forward.
Recommendations that the results and the findings were on how government, in terms of policies and support, should support businesses during COVID or post-COVID. And these are just a few. The first was to restructure loans, to waive and reduce tax payments, payroll, both payroll and corporate taxes in critical business sectors.
The global pandemic destroyed years of progress made in the implementation of SDGs. Recovery towards sustaining existing gains will require collective efforts and stronger collaboration between the public and private sector. Reporting for the news, I am Winifred Nicole.
Now, the Office of the National Security Council partners with the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance to convene a forum on linking the security sector reform process to the constitutional review process. Fatou Janembai reports on the program funded by the British Embassy.
In the draft constitution of the Gambia, the military code is explicitly captured, which makes it easy for the security sector reform process. Unfortunately, this does not apply for the sister security forces, including the police, immigration, and the fire and rescue services. And therefore, the challenge can be enormous for the security reform process. To change that is the reason for this forum, linking the security sector reform process and the constitutional review process. Momodou Badji, the National Security Advisor to the President, further explains.
We want to align ourselves. We want to look at the omissions that we are created the last time, and so that we can come up this time and have a very strong position paper that will look critically at all the security institutions and ensure that, if I can call it, there is fair play, that all the security institutions are captured. All the security institutions, if it is going to be the mandate, all their mandates will be addressed.
The exercise is important for the security personnel in the execution of their mandate for peace and security.
And what we don't really want is for one particular security institution to have an advantage by having mandate, function, rules, etc. And then for some of the security institutions, we'll have just a mention sometimes of the head of the institution without, the mandates, etc.
The day-long seminar is spearheaded by the Office of the National Security in partnership with the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance. The British Embassy funded the project.
SSR should always remain a work in progress. The security sector will always be a dynamic environment responding to challenges as they emerge. As partners, we can help by providing the technical assistance and advice on how best to improve and strengthen security sectors, and help by informing policy and strategy formation from past experience and best practice.
Irrespective of the processes that will unfold within the Constitution, with the Constitution in terms of bringing it back in the coming weeks or months, there is some general agreement across the political spectrum that some changes to the Constitution are required to ensure alignment to the spirit and intent of the SSR process.
Dauda A. Jallo, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, said, linking the security sector reform process and the constitutional review process is important for a professional security service, considering its centrality in sustainable growth.
There is an urgent need to initiate a political process to dialogue with all stakeholders, especially with the leadership of all the political parties, including the President, to find a solution to the current constitutional impasse. As you may all be aware by now, I have been mandated by the Cabinet to proceed and initiate a dialogue among all stakeholders with a view to reaching a consensus on the draft constitution.
The forum availed the participants of the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the provisions pertaining to the security forces in the draft constitution, examine them, and as well determine their adequacy or otherwise, and suggest recommendations on the way forward. Reporting for the news, I am Fatou Janembai.
And now, November 18th is celebrated as African Statistics Day, set aside by statistical authorities across Africa to raise awareness about its significance in all aspects of social and economic life. This year's theme is modernizing national statistical systems to provide data and statistics to support sustainable peace and development in Africa. In a televised statement to mark the day, the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Mamboure Njie, said the government of the Gambia will give more attention to statistical operations and regular production of core statistics relating to sustainable peace and development. Let's take a listen.
18th November is commemorated as Africa Statistics Day. The day is dedicated to raise public awareness of the importance of statistics in all aspects of social and economic life. Statistics have shown that most crises and violent conflicts in Africa are driven by poverty, economic hardship, and violation or manipulation of constitutions, the violation of human rights, exclusion, inequality, marginalization, the mismanagement of Africa's rich ethnic diversity, relapse into cycles of violence in several post-conflict settings, and external interference in African affairs. Such consequences show the seeds of new conflicts, thereby creating a vicious cycle. Governance statistics are fundamental to ensuring that the relationship between the state and its people is inclusive, transparent, and accountable. Governance statistics contribute to the measurement and realization of human rights. They can help to identify groups or subgroups in the population that are most affected by dysfunctional in-governance system, with a view to putting in place appropriate targeted policies so as to leave no one behind.
Peace Hub the Gambia, in partnership with UNFPA, recently organized a day-long training for 20 youth in the Greater Banjul area in transitional justice. The training, which was held at the Kanifing Municipal Hall, is aimed at empowering youths in the area of peace and transitional justice process. GRTS correspondent Baba Silla reports.
The day-long training gathered young people within the municipality with a focus on the crucial role young people play in strengthening transitional justice via peace building through reconciliation. As the Gambia's single biggest demographic, the country's young people have a fundamental role to play. Since its formation in May 2020, the organization has trained scores of young people across the country. The recent training introduces several vital components specifically designed to guide participants through basic peace building and support processes. The acting executive director of the National Youth Council delivered a motivational statement during his opening statement, taxing participants to take the training seriously and use the opportunity to broaden understanding about their role in transitional justice.
The final decision for conflict or for war is not made by us as young people, but we bear the brunt of the repercussion as young people and as children and as women. In a political conflict, it is the politician that declares war. The general will draw the strategy, but the foot soldier is you and I that will be fighting in the battlefield. Not the general that drew the strategy, and not the politician that declared war. He would have been right in his office, and it is you and I that will be in the battlefield fighting. And this is why we are key in understanding the essence of peace and how to maintain peace. Because this is the only way our countries can prosper in the long run, and when our countries prosper in the long run, we certainly, as young people, will be able to showcase our expertise, our skills in innovation, to be able to benefit ourselves and by extension society. And when we come into leadership tomorrow, which is certainly inevitable.
Jaju also highlighted some of the major capacity developments registered so far through various training schemes and nationwide engagement conducted since the starting of the Transitional Justice Program in the Gambia. highlighting the importance of empowerment and crucial role played by youth in national development. UNFPA's Fatima Sonko commended the organization for staging such an important training in peace building.
To ensure meaningful participation in transitional reform processes, young men and women will need to be broadly represented and consulted at all stages, as inclusivity is key to advancing national peace-building processes and objectives. It is important to provide youths with training opportunities like this one in order for them to become active agents of social cohesion and peace.
Outreach Coordinator Elizabeth Gomez gave a rundown of the association's activities and interventions geared towards youth empowerment. Peace-building efforts are gaining increased attraction in the Gambia, but officials are trying to engage youth participation in the process targeted to strengthen current democratic and development achievements. For GRTS News, I am Baba Silla.
We now head to the Central River region, where Action Aid the Gambia, with support from the European Union, concluded a 4-day training for 20 rural poultry farmers in Central River region in poultry feed formulation and chicken processing. Molamin Sane has more in this report.
An intensive 4-day training, these members of the Rural Poultry Farmers Association have successfully completed learning on how to process chicken and add value to their products. The program joins the raft of projects under the Strengthening Women Economic Initiative funded by the European Union. This farmer capacity building training is meant to enhance knowledge in the making of chicken feed to enable producers process food for their birds.
The aim of the project is to ensure that these women know how to process this chicken so that at the end of the day they will be able to store it to avoid wastage, to avoid losses of income, because normally when they take it to the Lumo, sometimes they cannot sell all of it, and when they come back with the remaining ones, at the end of the day they are tired. The chickens are tired, and it's like most of them lost their chickens in the process.
Poultry farmers were introduced to every step in chicken feed production and processing and ways to compete the market. The initiative is a strategic venture to discourage the high rate of chicken and feed importation flooding local markets.
Feed encounters about 75% of the total cost, production cost. So you'll realize that then their cost of production will be very high. So we said, fine, as an organization, one thing we can do is let us help them. One, let them train them on how to formulate feed, and then they will also be producing their own feed. We hope that will be able to reduce the cost by 5%, hopefully. That's what we hope. Secondly is, okay, let's also try them, help them on how to process the birds and add value to it, so that they can compete the chicken legs and then be able to stand firm in the market. And that is all about this training.
Poultry productions are growing, with more producers joining the value chain, which has become a major global food source, but the industrial competition from large companies and supplies is business for local farmers. Training farmers to locally produce feed is crucial in boosting current gains and attaining the country's food self-sufficiency drive.
Very important to me, because what happens in the next few months' time, very soon we'll start, we are already in the process of breeding birds. So very soon we are trying to slaughter them, we slaughter them afterwards, then raise them, and then put them in the freezers. So now I know how you are slaughter a bird, and then how to put it in the hot water. From putting it in the hot water, how to clean it and package it.
This training program will significantly support current output, allowing these farmers to effectively expand production and mitigate existing marketing challenges. Modula Minsane reporting for GRTS News from the Central River region.
Interesting one there. And now in the Upper River region, URR Regional Health Directorate has partnered with Lee and Sandu Development Agency to build community resilience for the prevention of COVID-19 through information sharing. The event was meant to localize the preventive methods of COVID-19 at community level. Our correspondent Seydou Kamara covered the event and filed in this report.
The new strategy by the community of URR and TAG members initiated by WASDAM will provide better ideas and good practices to fight against COVID-19 pandemic in the Gambia. According to WASDA officials, they have been organizing similar sensitization programs over the years, especially during the Ebola outbreak in partnership with Regional Health Directorate. WASDA program coordinator Ibrahim Kinte called for collaborative effort in the fight against COVID-19, adding that the global pandemic can only be contained or eradicated when people put their efforts together.
We feel COVID-19 cannot be controlled, or we cannot overcome it in an isolation system, but instead all hands have to be on deck. That's why we call our project proposal to be on collaborative and partnership building. And as a result, we feel that one of the areas that we need to work on seriously is to engage communities, sound their opinions, develop an action that will gear towards their own preventive measures. So that's why we came up with this. Before this stakeholder engagement, as we are witnessing today, we did a community engagement in 10 communities in URR North.
Mr. Kinder further said the initiative will avail them the opportunity to come up with a community action plan in preventing COVID-19.
To empower communities to come up with their own local initiative, and we try to work around local initiative and then do the support in terms of prevention. In all the 10 communities was very much positive, and it was very much lively for the fact that they have seen that whatever we are trying to do, everything will come back to them. That is, they are going to be the owners. And that's one beauty of this particular engagement, because we want to get back the ownership to the people.
One of the health officers, Khalifa Kande, described the event as key. It is meant to enhance community activities engagement, discuss and come up with a local strategy in fighting against COVID-19.
So with regards to this program, this presentation we had today, it is very important because these are different organizations that has come together to listen to what we have presented and what are our findings at the communities where we went to, so that they can also add their input. Because all these departments or organizations are people who are intervening in the areas where WASDA has intervened. So which means the communities are the interest of every department that is in URR. Or all the communities that we have intervened in, we select some people to come and we discuss with them the findings in all the communities, so that they also look at the practices that have been done in other communities, the good practices that they can emulate.
The Executive Director of WASDA, Keba M. Silla, said the regional stakeholders' engagement on COVID-19 was set up to come up with a strategic plan to fight against the pandemic at community level.
As many people believe, COVID-19 is beyond one institutional problem. This is a global problem, and it has to be tackled by collaborative efforts. This is why WASDA and the Catalan funds from Spain, Barcelona, decided to come up with this engagement forum. Is to share information, is to show good practices, towards COVID-19 pandemic, fight. So we know, if we all join together, we will win the fight.
The idea of the community engagement strategy plan is for communities to take ownership in the fight against COVID-19 at the local level, while using the recommended preventive methods by WHO, which include to avoid crowd or social gatherings, regular hand washing with soap and running water, wearing of face masks, among others. Sadhu Kamara, reporting for GRTS News from Basse Upper River Region.
And we'll go with news beyond our borders right after this break. Do stay. Welcome back. Now, a World Bank delegation is in Cairo to review Egypt's economic policy amid the slowdown caused by the coronavirus pandemic. The North African state has largely withstood the COVID-19 shock, but serious challenges still remain and could limit long-term growth. CGTN's Yasa Hakim has more.
The World Bank report has commended Egypt's economic and fiscal policies during the pandemic. The North African state has succeeded in keeping growth at over 2.5%, while most of the countries in the region have witnessed major contractions. The report, however, says there are two main issues that need to be addressed by Cairo in order to maintain the success going forward. First is stimulating private sector activity. A sluggish private sector means low tax revenues, low foreign direct investments, and weak exports for manufacturing and non-petroleum industries.
The Ministry of Industry is undergoing several programs and changes to ease the process of establishing factories, cut on bureaucracy and red tape, and facilitate regulations. Foreign investments are currently $9 billion. The government wants to increase that amount through diversification. Among other tools, it has lately tapped into green bonds for the first time to attract investors in green and renewable energy.
Higher private sector activity would solve the second shortcoming addressed in the report, which is job creation.
The World Bank delegation is working with the government to study how to support the SME sector, which is the backbone of the economy, as well as employment. The plans are aimed at expanding the sector further, even if the coronavirus pandemic remains for the long term.
The government is also working on upgrading the skills of the labor force. Training is essential, especially on technology use, to be able to produce higher quality employment opportunities. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's now turn to Tanzania, where the newly elected President John has laid out his priorities for the next 5 years. Among other things he has pledged to focus on is the transformation of key parts of the economy, while removing hurdles facing investors who want to deploy capital in the East African country. Details in this report.
President John Magufuli is in Parliament to lay out his plans for the next 5 years. Big on his agenda is growing the country's economy. He says achieving his goal will require the efforts of all Tanzanians.
We need to have many Tanzanian billionaires, including parliamentarians. I want all Tanzanians to fully take part in building their country.
The president wants to see economic growth of 8% annually and 8 million jobs created over the next 5 years. He also wants to see increased domestic and foreign investment in the country's industries. To this end, the president is offering tax cuts and improvement of the country's investment climate.
There has been a lot of bureaucracy and hassle for investors and a lot of time wasting, causing them to lose hope. I want an investor with funds to get the necessary permits within 14 days.
The 2020 Doing Business report indicates that Tanzania has climbed 2 positions to the 141st position globally, but the country still lags behind its East African neighbors, Rwanda and Kenya. According to the United Nations 2020 World Investment Report, foreign direct investment in Tanzania reached $1.1 billion in 2019, about a 5% increase from the previous year. President Magufuli hopes that attracting more investment will not only translate into the economic growth he desires, but also into better lives for ordinary Tanzanians. Business people in the country are generally optimistic about the government's plans, but say it must address their challenges.
Most business people had the ability to travel abroad on their own to buy merchandise, but things have become difficult since the coronavirus hit, so we have to use proxies to order things, and so it is really affecting us.
If the government helps us get those investors with deep pockets, I think I can go far and reach where the president was talking about, having many billionaires. I can be among them.
I can be among them.
The road ahead for President Magufuli may not be an easy one. The World Bank projects growth of 4% this year from the previous 7% due to the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Just how well the country navigates these hurdles to improve Tanzanian lives remains to be seen. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
And now we go with this weather report, courtesy of the Central Forecast Office. Now, before we end this newscast, a recap of the day's top stories. Improving content packaging and technical expertise, a 3-member team from Senegal has arrived in the country for an assessment tour of GRTS facilities. Ministry of Finance and private sector stakeholders are meeting to discuss the implementation of the SDGs and NDP, among others. Modernizing national statistical systems to provide data and statistics to support sustainable peace and development in Africa is the global theme for this year's African Statistics Day. Elsewhere around the world, Tanzania's President John Magufuli has pledged to focus on the economy, bringing investors this following his re-election as the country's new president. And a World Bank delegation has visited Cairo to help review Egypt's economic policy. Well, that does it for this edition of the GRTS News. With me, Fatili Kamuloshi, from myself and the entire news team. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of our programs. Good evening.